in those days, right? Key disease. And who we played with, sure, we'll do that. We'll bring in scrapbooks. Well, this is so much better than watching the news, isn't it? I think we should just let go of the news and come here whenever we want to find out what's going on. Oh gosh, it makes you feel powerless sometimes when you see all the things that are going on in the world. And so, I think collectively, the collective consciousness has a little post-traumatic stress right now that everybody's going through. People are feeling powerless and not knowing what to do. There's all this fear and separation thinking. So I thought, well, what a perfect time to do an in-depth study of the 12 powers of the Christ. Now, we touch on it a little bit at Christmas time. It's the only ritual we have in Unity, where we have our 12-power Christmas candle lighting service. But what I'm going to do is take each power and go much deeper to a more expanded understanding of that power. And by the time we're done, I hope we will really know the powers of the Christ in us and the apostle they rode in on, okay? Because if you remember from Christmas, Charles Fillmore in meditation came to the realization that when Jesus called forth his 12 apostles, metaphysically everything is, what is that in me? He was really calling forth the 12 attributes or powers of the Christ presence that we all have within us. And Jesus knew if he was about to do this ministry that he came to do, he better be fully empowered. I said powdered. Powered. There's a difference. One's on a donut and one is in. So we all want to be fully empowered. So we're going to start today with faith, the power of faith, and the apostle is Peter. Now Cheryl and Francis want me to include women, and since Jesus had all men for the 12 apostles, I promised that this Christmas we're going to have 12 women with the 12 men. But for now we're sticking with the traditional, just so that we can go deeper into the understanding. So let's start with the biblical definition of faith that many of you were raised with. Faith is the assurance of things hoped for and the conviction of things not seen. Some people even say it's the very substance of things not seen. So there's 3 parts to this. I'm going to be repeating this throughout my message. The first part is any belief or idea in your mind, a belief, idea, a vision, with assurance and conviction begins the creative process in your life. Any idea or belief in your mind with assurance and conviction begins the creative process, and that's how we manifest things in our life. Now that can work for you or against you, depending on what you believe and have faith in, but we'll get to that in a minute. When Charles Fillmore was meditating on this all, he realized that every time he meditated on one of the 12 powers, it seemed to connect with a different part of the body. And so with faith, we connect with the pineal gland. And anybody who has studied ancient esoteric wisdom, they know that they call it a doorway to God. And there are many symbols throughout the many philosophies of the world for the symbol of that pineal gland. Andy Murphy said, the pineal gland is an organ of supreme universal connection, and its significance appears in every culture of the world. Look online, look at symbols. It's through the awakening of the third eye and its corresponding pineal gland that we're able to attain supernatural feats of telepathy, psychic vision, and an intimate connection with God. It's like to have vision beyond the veil, that doorway to God through the pineal gland. And that's why a lot of people, when they meditate, will focus on the third eye. And that's a great way to meditate. I tend to meditate through the heart, which is a whole nother power, a whole nother apostle. We'll get to that eventually, but right now we're on the third eye, the pineal gland. So when people do that, often they see a real deep blue. Anybody here see that real deep blue when you focus on the third eye? Or some of you might see violet or indigo, but it's always that deep blue state. And so faith is that mental belief right here that starts the vision of your life. And again, it can work for you or against you. Oops, do I really believe that? Do I really want to believe that? What do you have faith in? That's what starts the belief. Do you have faith in all the things you see on the news? Do you have faith in the power of the world? Or do you have faith in your union with God? I love it. We're starting to read the Course in Love now, along with the Course in Miracles on Monday. And the Course in Love has a great chapter. It talks about faith a little bit. It talks about faith as loyalty. What are you loyal to? And that most people are loyal to their fears. They're loyal to that separation thinking. So what do you have faith in? What are you loyal to? Because you know what? As Flip Wilson used to say, everybody, what you see is what you get, honey. What you see is what you get, and you really do. So what are the three things? Faith is that mental belief, idea, or vision that you believe in with such conviction and assurance that it starts the creative process in your life. And that's why I like Charles Fillmore's definition even better than the biblical definition. He said faith is the perceiving power of your mind to shape substance. Wow, talk about power. That everything you really have faith in and believe in powerfully is shaping that substance all the way around you. And then you wonder some days, how did this show up in my life? I didn't do anything. I didn't ask for this. No, but what did you have faith in? Fear? Or your unity with God? Now, the whole Bible is one after another stories of the evolution of faith. Almost everyone involves a person with their faith and what happened to them. And it starts with Abraham, one of the greatest stories of all, when God comes to him and says, Abe, come here, get out there. As far as the eye can see, as far as you can see, that's the land I will give you. But you have to leave your father's house first. You have to leave where you are. And then as far as you can see, north, south, east, west. But first you have to leave your father's house. In other words, leave that old limited paradigm that you've been programmed with. No judgment on our parents. Society itself has programmed us. We have to leave all that behind. Go forth from your land, from what you've created here, from your birthplace, your father's house, to the land that I will show you, because God's showing us a higher vision, a different programming. In Genesis 13, raise your eyes now, Abraham, raise your eyes, look up higher with a higher vision. For all the land you see, I will give to you and your offspring forever, as far as the eye can see. How far can you see? How much land can you see? Land metaphysically means the manifestation of all that you see in your vision with assurance and conviction that has been created now in your life. You know, I grew up with the more traditional meaning that, you know, God said to Abraham, go move to where I tell you to move. And it was like, okay, we're supposed to obey God and go wherever God tells us to go. How'd that work for you? That doesn't feel good, does it? God gave us free will. Nobody tells me where to move. I've moved enough time in my life. God's saying, it's up to you as far as you can see. And we all have a choice of what we want to see. Nobody's being forced to see a higher vision. You can stay in that lower energy as long as you want. But as far as you choose to see in all directions, that's where your creative power is going to start making it happen in your life. Now, metaphysically, this story is about all of us leaving behind all those influences that have kept us from being the people that we're capable of being, so that our real divine self can emerge. See how we have to leave that all behind and have faith in the higher vision of who and what we are as divine, creative beings. Now the scripture also goes on to a man by the name of Jabez. And there's a prayer of Jabez that is very similar. He says, oh, that you would bless me indeed and enlarge my territory. Again, enlarge my, not, it doesn't mean we all want more property in our life. It means expand my faith so that I can expand my vision, so that as far as I can see, can show up in my life. And that prayer of Jabez is often used along with tithing, the tithing of 10%, which immediately brings up fears for you to let go of and allow your faith to expand your beliefs, to increase your faith, which expands your vision and ends up expanding your territory. The prayer of Jabez, oh, that you would bless me indeed and enlarge my territory. And our loyalty then has to be our union with God, not the outer world. Now, another character in the Old Testament, Moses, led the people to the promised land, the land of Canaan. And metaphysically, that represents going to the promised land, going to that higher state of being that we can experience on this physical plane. That promised land. I used to think it was California. I kept trying to get there, but I got there and it was too crowded, so I came back to Arizona. You know, it's that highest state of being that I could experience now on this physical plane. And when they got there, they sent the spies in. You know, a couple spies, go in and check this out for us. But the spies were loyal to their fears. They were loyal to the thought of separation. And the story goes, when the children of Israel were sent over into the promised land to spy it out, they brought back only a small portion of the fruits of the land. They said, well, this land is well fortified with inhabitants, and they don't receive you very kindly. They're giants in the land, and we're as grasshoppers in their sight. And they got afraid. As far as the eye can see, and they couldn't see any further than the giant fears, the obstacles, the opposition, instead of seeing the opportunities. They chose what to see. And Moses had to send somebody else in, Joshua, who had the faith and the vision to see beyond that fear, to see beyond it. What you see is what you get. Of course, in love, again, what is your faith and loyalty in? The assurance of what we see in the outer to solve our problems. We can't rely on anything in the outer right now. We cannot put our assurance out there. It has to be, I place my assurance in my union with God. Let's say that together. I place my assurance in my union with God. And Jesus, as he started his ministry, going to the New Testament now, based his whole ministry on faith. Now, there is a Bible passage that's been misused. He goes to Peter and he says, Peter, you are Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church. And that's often been manipulated by the Catholic Church to say, well, Jesus started the Catholic Church and this is the true church, because we go all the way back to Peter. But the name Peter meant faith. And Jesus knew if he was starting this movement that he came to start, he didn't come to start another church. That's why we know it didn't mean that. He didn't come to start another. He was a good Jewish boy. He did not come to start another church. He came to start a movement of truth. And he knew that had to be based on what we had faith in. And he knew that faith had to be based in truth. He taught faith in the union with God. The Father and I are one. Know this truth, and the truth will set you free. That is the faith, the rock upon which he started, the great movement that he started. And he taught all the apostles lessons in faith. And good old Peter was such a great example of how we struggle with faith and how our faith has evolved. Jesus asked him to come out and walk on water. Can you imagine? And as long as Peter was looking into the eyes of Jesus, he stepped out of the boat and started walking on water. And as soon as he let go of looking to Jesus, something in the outer on his faith, and realized he had been doing this himself, he immediately began to sink. And Jesus had to lift him back up. We cannot look to the outer. We cannot put our loyalty there. Later, his faith was tested again when they arrested Jesus and took him off to torture him and crucify him. He was standing around and some woman yells out, oh, he was with him. This guy, Peter, he was with Jesus, and Peter's sitting there, I don't know who it is. I've never met that man before. I think I'd have done the same thing personally. I wouldn't have wanted to be let off either and be crucified and tortured. His faith was tested. He put his loyalty again in the fear. Wouldn't we all do that at times? The fear of being punished, the fear of something going wrong. My point is that faith evolves through experience of testing our faith and trusting in it and seeing how it starts to manifest in our lives. After the crucifixion and resurrection, Peter's faith had become strong, and he went out to lead the church in Rome, just like James stayed and led the church in Jerusalem. Another story for another apostle. Faith doesn't just happen. We have to work at it. Somebody asked the other day, how do you build faith? Practice, practice, practice. My whole life has been moving around. Talk about leave your father's house. I don't know how many times I've moved in my life. My son and I and my sister had fun one time making a list of how many times we'd moved, and we had a contest to see who had moved the most times. And the number was very large for all of us. I don't remember. But every time I moved to start a new life, and usually it was with very little, to rely on out there, my faith had to expand. If I'm going to do this thing, I have to have faith that I can do this on a shoestring, that I can make this happen. And every time I did, my faith increased. Faith is powerful, powerful, especially where healing is concerned. Jesus said, it is your faith that heals you. By your faith you are healed. He didn't say, take 2 aspirin and call me in the morning. He said, by your faith you are healed. And in the book of Mark, there's a man comes to him, and his son is having convulsions. And he just won't stop the convulsions. And this poor man, he went up to Jesus begging him, and he started by saying, if you can heal my son, if you can heal my son. And I love the answer, because I can just hear Jesus saying it in complete frustration. If I can, all things are possible to him who believes. And immediately the father said, Lord, I believe, help my unbelief. Don't we all feel that way? I can believe this much, but now help the rest. Help me believe beyond that. Help me expand my vision of what I can believe in and have faith to become who I have come to be. I would add belief and surrender, because once you believe and claim it and affirm it, you've got to let it go and allow the flow to take you there, and that takes surrender. And luckily, we only need faith the size of a mustard seed, because some days that's all I got. But it's enough. It's enough to plant the seed. I'll never forget my mother. You all know my story. I don't need to tell it again. In my spontaneous healing, the morning of what I call a miracle, my mother woke up and she was getting ready to go to the hospital. They had already told her that I'd probably be gone by the time she got there. And she was so sad. And all of a sudden she actually heard the voice. And the voice very loudly said to her, "O ye of little faith. O ye of little faith." And my mother heard it and said, "Yeah, where is my faith? Yeah." And she got to the hospital, and I was completely, spontaneously healed. Jesus said, if you have faith the size of a mustard seed, you shall say to this mountain, be removed, and it will be removed, and nothing shall be impossible to you. And I'm so glad it only takes a little faith, because some days that's all I got to work with. But I keep working it until it expands. And the faith draws my good from the invisible to the visible. It draws it out. The perceiving power of my mind shapes the substance around me. If you will repeat 3 parts. I'll say it first and then say it with me. First part, I can have whatever I have faith to feel worthy enough to receive. Together, I can have whatever I have faith to feel worthy enough to receive. One more time. I can have whatever I have faith to feel worthy enough to receive. It's an evolution. As a child, my faith was blind faith. The church said you had to believe it, so I believed it. Blind faith. As an adult, I had more reasoning with my faith, and I left the church of my childhood. What faith, what courage that took. What courage that took to leave the church of my childhood. Against family traditions. Literally leaving my father's house. And God was saying, come to the land that I will show you. Years later, my godmother, said to me, did they excommunicate you? I said, I don't think they know I've left yet. But my faith is in God, so it really doesn't matter what they think. What are you being asked to have faith in today? What are you being asked to have faith in? God, we believe. Help my unbelief. Let's take that into prayer. God, we do believe. Expand our territory of what we have faith in. Expand that assurance and conviction that we are united with God, that we are one with each other, one with the universe, and all the power of the universe is in us. Expand my territory. Expand my faith. I know I can have whatever I have faith to feel worthy enough to receive. And I am so blessed in that union. Thank you, God, and so it is. Amen.